You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forest, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
All right, so we talked about this briefly up front, and I pointed out the hazel eyes. This thing is such an anomaly here. There are things erased here and typed over, and you know, they were sloppy. Can you see how sloppy they were in this deception? This isn't like this isn't like these aren't like skilled intelligence officers. They're winging this shit. Okay, they're winging this. Oswald's fingerprints. All right, so here we have another problem. We have two different enlistment contracts for Lee Harvey Oswald. I don't know why. Both of them indicate most of the same information. They look almost like duplicates, but then we have different signatures. We have different markings. Like look at in the middle, what I've got highlighted in red. Those are different signatures, right? This is supposed to be the same fucking document, right? This doesn't make any sense at all. There's no reason for this to exist. I'm going to give credit to Robert Duran, who wrote a book called Mistaken Identity, Infinity Publishing, 2016. I can't find this fucking book. If anybody can find this book, I'll give you $100 for it right now. This information here shows that Oswald, and there's no dates on this document. We're not, I don't understand how we're supposed to interpret this document. This document is a release from duty. Okay. It's a release from duty document. In one of them, it says release from active duty in the Marine Corps. The other one says enlistment and active duty at sea or foreign service. Now, some people will tell you, and people have said this, that one is meant for his deployment overseas and the other was meant for his depart from the Marine Corps. That's complete fiction. That's nonsense. That is a completely different document. That is a completely different fucking document. Okay. This is your release from the Marine Corps document. Okay. And so one of them says he was enlisted and put on active duty at sea or on a foreign service. And there's no date on it for us to even know when the fuck this was. So this is what I call shenanigans. Thanks to Robert Duran for pointing this out. Okay, so we have a lot of problems with Oswald's schedule, which, as you'll see, Oswald will engage in some behaviors while in the Marine Corps, which are hard to describe. One thing I want to point out to you, you see how this document, this is a best known copy. It's faded. Half the stuff you can't read. It's like they were trying to hide something there and dates. And, I've got at least 10 or 15 other exact same documents like this for other people in the Marines with Oswald that are crystal clear. This is the only one that's fuzzy in the least, of course. So when you go through this, you'll find that Oswald went into basic training in San Diego, California. He then goes into what they refer to as ICT training at Camp Pendleton. And so I found different designations for ICT training and different designations for combat training. Ultimately, it's combat training. But I spent a lot of time on it trying to figure it out because it didn't make any sense. And combat training actually has another 3-letter designation. And ICT training also indicated some sort of overseas technical training for people stationed overseas. So they had different designations, and it took me about a month to really figure that out. But ICT training is combat training. We do run into some problems with that, and we'll get to those here coming up. So then you have the aviation basic training at Jacksonville. It's really aviation electronics. But it's not the full electronics course. They have a weird bunch of hybrid courses that you can take when you get into the aviation stuff, but everyone, no matter what, went to Jacksonville first to take this basics course before they ended up at Keesler in Biloxi, where we run into some very interesting things. So everybody who goes to Biloxi, which is where you go to the basic warning operator course, which is not advanced. They keep saying it's advanced radar operator. It's not. Okay. Oswald was not a radar operator. He was a control board operator, which is that clear board that's got the white lines on it, and they made magic marker stuff on it. There is no evidence that he sat behind a radar unit once. Never. The vast majority of the time, the guy was in trouble and was either on mess duty or on guard duty, or when he gets to Santa Ana, he's in trouble again. Like, this you guy's always in trouble. And he gets to Santa Ana, he never worked in the radar unit. He worked as like the janitor for the radar unit, right? So all the stories of Oswald being a fucking radar operator are bullshit. But everyone who went to that school at Biloxi, it says Casco HQBN HQMC, which means Casual Company, Headquarters Battalion, Headquarters Marine Corps, and that is located at Arlington, Virginia. All right. Everybody who goes to Biloxi has that on there. So it's an obfuscation because radar stuff was supposed to be top secret. So you'll find that on the records of Owen Dejanovich and Richard Cole and a whole bunch of other dudes who ended up going through that stuff. And guys like Bud Simcoe and all those guys. And even Kerry Thornley, who lied about going through aviation school, and which I can prove beyond all doubt. And we're going to get to that here in a little bit. Ooh, that's some of the best stuff. Yeah, here at Keesler Air Force Base, you got shenanigans afoot. And so allegedly he gets out of there. We saw the picture. I think I got the picture around here somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Casual Company, Headquarters Battalion in Washington, D.C., which is actually Arlington, Virginia. Here's the problem. He graduates. We know the dates that he was actually at Biloxi and actually at Jacksonville, and those dates don't match other documents. We have a series of documents which are basically duplicate records that are Oswald records, but that indicate that he was in a course that was 1 week behind the course that he's known to have been in and graduated from on June 18th, 1957. Okay. So Oswald goes through his basic training at Pendleton. Then he goes to Jacksonville for the basic aviation and electronics course. Then from there, he goes to Biloxi, where he will begin. What date is it? Is it May the 3rd? I forget. I'm starting to slip a little, people. I'm on for almost 4 hours. Yeah, I'm starting to slip a little, but I think we can make it through this. What slide am I on? Oh, we only got 150 slides to go. Not a big deal. This 325 date is wrong, right? So there's evidence repeatedly, and we have supportive statements from guys like Owen Dejanovich in particular, who indicate that Oswald was actually in the radar course at Biloxi 1 week behind the official story. That will carry over into a couple other schools. And then we have a divergence where we know Oswald will leave Biloxi and he will end up going to El Toro, California. And then from there, he gets there. This is another thing. I have the documents on this one coming up. Oswald is in a group of 6 people, but he is scheduled to arrive to El Toro 3 days before the rest of his group for unknown reasons. Maybe I can find those coming up. Another problem we have with Biloxi is when he gets to Biloxi, the group of 6, he's like with Schrand, Brereton, Powers. With the other names are coming up here in a minute. But these guys are together from the end of Jacksonville until they get to, all the way through Biloxi. And this is super important because these guys, for the most part, minus Schrand, will stick together throughout the time in Japan, in Atsugi, right? So it feels to me, and other previous researchers have speculated, that these guys were all paired with Oswald because they were in on this deception, okay? And that kind of makes sense. But this document here that we're looking at, it shows like, it says here, class status assigned to, and the dates it has on here, May 7th and 8th and all this stuff. It's talking about Oswald and him going to this school down at Keesler. But when they arrive at Keesler on whatever date they arrive on, there's change. The course that the 6 guys are supposed to be in is changed. And it's changed to a course that began like weeks before the class that they're supposed to be in. So there's some kind of weird shenanigans going on with the actual numbers of the course that Oswald was supposed to take at Biloxi, because I think that he was originally supposed to be in 08057 and they changed it to 24047. But the start and stop dates were like weeks apart, which is really fucking weird. Why would they be going there if the date was wrong in the first place, just to have them corrected upon arrival? It didn't make any sense to me. But when you realize that these guys who were paired with Oswald in the Marines are seemingly paired together on purpose and they will stick together, it kind of makes you wonder what their actual role in all this was. And you'll see what I mean as we get through some of this Marine stuff. Inconsistencies in the company, the 6 men are assigned to indicated here at Casco at the time they are at Keesler Air Force Base. Yeah, so for some reason, whenever they want to hide what you're doing when you're in training at the Marines, they put you on a casual company headquarters battalion for whatever. They did the same thing with Kerry Thornley, which we'll see coming up. Oh yeah, but those guys who were paired with Oswald, we're talking about Bandoni, Breritron, Camerata. It's Oswald and Powers and Trand, those 6. And this is one hell of a story. And, if we actually get some documents, I should get a couple hundred pages of documents on an event coming up that happened with Martin Trand. We'll talk about that could deserve a book to itself, really. I mean, you want to talk about crazy detective murder mystery stuff.
You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forest, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
Okay. Oswald's handwritten biography indicates he took classes for his GED while he was at Keesler Air Force Base. However, his actual GED completion was attained on March 23rd, 1959 at Santa Ana. So I'll show you this here. All right. So you see that handwriting, that chicken scratch? That is Harvey Oswald's handwriting. Okay. And this is what he says about himself. He says, I served in the U.S. Marine Corps from October 56 to September 59, during which time I trained in San Diego, California. And it was October 56 until April 60, it says, but that's not correct. Camp Pendleton, April to May 59 or 57, Jacksonville, Florida. May, June 57, Santa Ana. June to April 57 in Japan. So all the dates he's giving here are wrong. Like the dates that he's writing in here, they match the discrepancies in the documents that indicate that Oswald was a week behind the documents that we know about. What he says here matches what we know from Owen Dejanovic. However, what it doesn't say in the first paragraph, and I need everyone to really pay close attention to this, in this very first paragraph, he basically lays out a very specific timeline on everywhere he was. But he doesn't mention Biloxi at all. But then go to the last paragraph, and here you go. He talks about being at Biloxi. Well, when, motherfucker? When were you at Biloxi? You just explained all these places you were, and you don't have time to be at Biloxi. But here in this last paragraph, you say you were at Biloxi. What the fuck? You see what I'm saying? Like, even in his own hand, he contradicts himself. What does this mean? I don't fucking know. Oswald's GED results came back 3/23/59. That was when March 59 is really important because it's seemingly a couple months after Oswald gets back from Atsugi and all the stuff, Corregidor and all that stuff. But he's now back, and it's in March that he undergoes a battery of testing. We'll look to it later on, but he ends up going to like Yuma, Arizona, and he goes out to San Francisco, California to do drills. And like, I don't believe for a split second he was ever at the Monterey Language School. It doesn't make sense, and nobody learns fucking Russian in 3 weeks. So the whole story about that is garbage, if you ask me. But this right here contradicts the idea that he got his GED while he was at Biloxi, which he doesn't indicate he was ever at until that last paragraph, right? So what the fuck's going on here? This is shenanigans. Again, here's another alternative. Alternative is all these documents are fakes, and I've been studying a Truman Show for the last 10 years. That's the other possibility. Either everything I'm saying is completely correct, or it's all Truman Show, and the joke's on me. There we go. That's his high school equivalency, dated March 25th, 59. Again, all the red, blue, and the black dates. That's all contradiction. That all shows that he was, not in places that he should have been, whatnot. Here we go. His documentation shows he got out June 57 from the aviation electronics operator course. But no, he graduated June 18th, 1957. Here we go. We have more documents that don't make sense. It says he was in aircraft maintenance and repair. Okay, so if he was aircraft maintenance and repair and that was what his duty assignment was, that would have mandated him going to Memphis. But we don't have that. We don't have that confirmation that he ever went to Memphis at all, right? Not at all. It doesn't fit the timeline for him to have gone to Memphis. And as you'll see, we have some witnesses who put him in Memphis, but they're kind of unreliable, to say the least. All right, so I talked about Owen Dejanovic, so I'm not going to waste any more time on this. Owen Dejanovic was confirmed to be in that course that was 1 week behind that he said he was in with Oswald, but we can't confirm that Oswald was there and the dates don't match. You see, the dates are off by 1 week, from the 4th of May to the 12th of May, and the 19th of June to the 26th of June. So, all right, here we go. Boot training San Diego 10/25/56. Boot training San Diego ends 1/18/57. He's then transferred to ICT training. He's in A company. He's then on leave, which would correspond with him going to visit his mother at 3830 West 6th and being seen by Mr. McCracken next door, right? So we have that confirmation and we have the record scheduled to show that it's correct, which again shows support for the idea that there were 2 addresses back then that contradict. So when everything seems to fall into place, let it fall into place. Okay, so now we have a guy named Alan Feld who is problematic, to say the least, and can't be really used as any kind of verifiable witness. But what Alan Feld gives us is the idea that there's some shenanigans afoot. Again, more shenanigans. Can you believe it? According to Feld, he was assigned to Oswald's platoon 2060 and 56. He then went with Oswald to Camp Pendleton, where they both had combat training in May of 57. They both went to Basic Aviation Electronics School in Jacksonville, Florida. In July, they both went to Radar School in Memphis, Tennessee. About September, they were separated, and Feld went to Opelika, which is where? Florida, where Robert Oswald was in 53. Now it's 57, and those operations are over. They're moving from Arbenz through into Mongoose and all those things that happened in the 60s, right? So Feld goes to Opelika at a time when it's still a CIA base. Gotcha. That's the whole point there. Here's the problem with Feld. Let me see if I have a document on this. The problem with Feld is that when you go and you pull the actual Marine diaries, which I did, there is no Alexander Feld or Alan Feld. He shows up at Alexander Feld, and on other documents as Alexander Feld. So we can confirm there was an A Feld, but it wasn't Alan Feld. I don't understand how to interpret this or why this is happening this way or who the fuck Alexander Feld is. So Oswald is assigned to combat training Camp Pendleton until June 20th of 57. I think I have more information on Feld coming up, which I think will explain some of what I just talked about. As indicated on Oswald's duty sheet, he reported at El Toro for the overseas draft on July 9th. However, we have another record that indicated he arrived at El Toro on July 17th, right? So this is phenomenal, and this is where these dummies didn't hide the records well enough, because they didn't realize that the duty roster that he had showed where he was is contradicted by his payroll records. And thank God for the payroll records, because the payroll records, when you understand the context that there were 2 of them, they start to make perfect sense. And we will see absolute proof of the 2 of them here in the Marines at the same time, just like we saw all throughout Oswald's life. Like I said, unless we're in a big Truman Show. So here's another issue that I need to talk about. Oswald wasn't the only Oswald going through the Marines aviation courses at this time. Okay. Clayton Oswald will begin an aviation fundamentals course at Jacksonville starting April 20th, 57. There are now 2 Oswalds at NAS Jacksonville in different classes, Clayton and Lee Oswald. On April 30th, NAS Jacksonville roster of current and incoming recruits shows that Clifford Oswald is now assigned to NAS Jacksonville for a class starting in May. So now you got Clayton Oswald, Clifford Oswald, and Lee Oswald, all there at Jacksonville at the same time in the same courses, right? You think that's coincidence? Oh, and then, sorry guys, now we got another one. We got Clyde Oswald. So now we've got Clyde Oswald, Clayton Oswald, Clifford Oswald, and Lee Oswald, all going through the goddamn Marines aviation courses starting at Jacksonville. He'll then go to Biloxi, and then Clyde Oswald here. Guess where Clyde Oswald will go? Clyde Oswald, I'm going to read his obituary. Clyde Oswald passed away at home on May 4th, 2017. Clyde and his twin brother Clayton We're born in, a twin brother in a body fucking double operation. Never would have thought. Well, we're born in Rochester, Minnesota in 38 and grew up in a farming community just out of Pine Island, Minnesota. Clyde joined the U.S. Marine Corps in 56, served non-combat duty in Jacksonville, Florida, Memphis, Tennessee, and El Toro, California. Sound familiar? That sounds just exactly what Alan Feld said about Oswald, right? So can you see what I'm getting at with this? Sergeant Oswald was a recipient of the Good Conduct Medal in 59, was honorably discharged in 62. Okay. So what does that tell you? It tells you there were a bunch of Oswalds going through at the same time of our Oswald. And this is another thing that caught me off guard. Was he from? He was from Minnesota, which means he should have gone through at like Camp Paris or whatever that is on the other coast. But no, he ended up going through Camp Pendleton, which shouldn't have happened in the first place. But then you get stories like this. You get stories from a guy named Donald Goodwin. And Goodwin stated that he served in the United States Army from 53 to 59. His serial number was 1448272. He received an honorable discharge from the United States Marine Corps in June of 59 at Camp Pendleton, California, having completed 6-year service enlistment. Goodwin stated he recalls that in late 1956 or early 1957, he was returned to the United States from overseas assignment and he was sent to Camp Pendleton. Late 56 or early 57. Where's Oswald? Camp Pendleton. At this time, he was a communication specialist and had the rating of sergeant. He was assigned to a communication group in the 5th Marine Division made up of about 20 men. He recalls that one of the Marines in this group was Private First Class Oswald. Okay, this is impossible to be our Oswald because our Oswald wasn't promoted to Private First Class until May 2nd, 1957. Okay, you see the problem here. This is not the Oswald he's talking about. I fucking promise he's talking about Clyde, Clifford, or Clayton, right? This is an obfuscation via other Oswalds who are unrelated to the plot. You see what I'm saying? Like, I have no doubts these guys were put together in the same course as Oswald was to obfuscate this record. It's the only thing that makes any sense at all. Because this guy he's talking about, sure as shit ain't either of our Oswalds. So this is supposed to be the Harvey Oswald at Camp Pendleton in 1956, platoon 2070. But I don't understand something here. Maybe if maybe a Marine out there can shoot me an email or something. It says platoon 2060, San Diego, 1956. So he joined in 56, but this picture was taken on January the 17th, 1957. So please someone explain to me how he's class of 1956 if this picture is taken in 1957. I don't understand that. If someone could explain it to me, I'd appreciate it. This for documentation purposes only. I found this photograph, actually the original of this photograph, for auction somewhere. And it was an old auction. When I'm rich, I plan on buying every single goddamn piece of this stuff. I'm going to have the most insane Oswald collection you ever saw. And it's going to be worth millions. But yeah, I got a copy of this so I could see who actually was in his course. And like some of these other names pop up, like Speck here pops up and Copper pops up. Chief Bull Little, I'm not familiar with that guy, but Woods pops up. Here's Oswald, which is indicated right there. But that fucking guy, I mean, he doesn't really look like either of the Oswalds, if you ask me. So here we have more problems with the dates. The radar school says here, Oswald's radar school started April 24th, which is before when it actually started, which was May 4th, 57. And then you have the other course, which started a week later. Remember? So now we have dates showing up on documents that don't make any sense, shouldn't exist. And then what do you have here? Aircraft control warning operator. That was the course. It was aircraft control and warning operator. Okay. He did not work as a radar operator ever. Ever. He was a control board operator. And actually he worked in the mess hall because he sucked. So yeah, Keystone Air Force Base, this has all his documentation stuff. He clearly was not a radar operator. So this is the graduation photo, dated the 18th of June, 1957. There are only 6 Marines in this course, and the rest of them are Air Force. So, and the Air Force guys and the Marine guys, did you know not one of these damn Air Force people was interviewed? Not one? None? Zero? Like, who the hell's that woman in the middle? I don't know. Because we didn't fucking interview her. Why not? You see what I'm saying? When I talk about, like, they're not going to give us the documents, like, where are the statements of these people? You think they didn't have them? You think they didn't fucking interview these people? Gave me a break. I promise if we have 5 million known documents, there's at least 10 million unknown documents that we're never going to get. Same thing with this photograph here. I got some of the names on the back. I've spent got hundreds of hours like looking these guys up, and most of them are dead ends. So on the left is Harvey Oswald. That's him at Camp Pendleton, and that's Lee Oswald at the right. Going through different Marines at the same time, two different places. This is two different times actually, but remember they're supposed to be 1 week apart, and these are clearly not the same person. So Oswald and 5 other men will move from ICT training to Jacksonville, Florida, then Biloxi, Mississippi, and they'll stay together for the next year or so into the Philippines in late 57. These guys, Bandoni, Brereton, Camerata, Oswald, Powers, and Trand. Those 6. So I'm not going to get too heavy into the testimony of Daniel Powers, but Daniel Powers, I can't tell. I can't tell yet. I've read every single thing that's attached to him, period. And I can't tell if he was in on this, if he's just a real dummy, if he's an ignorant bystander. I don't know what's going on with him. But a lot of the things that he said here in his testimony don't really jive with what we know about the Oswald story. He will show up again in Oswald's life in Subic Bay, and he will remain at Subic Bay after Oswald leaves there and heads back to Aksugi. All right, so Jack Swike in his book, I'm almost done with this. It's called The Missing Chapter. It's about Oswald's life in the Marines, and he's got some really good information, some really deep information. But see, he didn't even have the right context, and so even he has contradictory information, especially about like the Philippines and all that stuff that we're going to talk about, and Oswald's anal bleeding, which we're going to get to here momentarily. But Jack Swike accurately stated that Oswald was a plotting board operator. He was not a radar operator ever. Here I just included for documentation. You guys can pause and read these if you want. These are the statements of guys who knew Oswald in the early days of the Marines.
You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forest, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
Okay, so Daniel Powers was murdered. A lot of people get murdered in this story. Daniel Powers was found shot to death in the right temple, and the gun was found in his left hand. It was deemed a suicide. I've tried to look up information on this guy. I've gone to the website for this mortuary. I cannot find any online information other than this, which came directly from the notes of John Armstrong, who personally located Powers. Oh yeah, did I mention he was shot in the right temple and had the gun in the left hand? All right, sea and air travel embarkation slips. Just goes to document some of the dates. So Oswald is indicated as still in Atsugi here. However, Oswald sailed for the Philippines on November 20th, 57, and will return March 18th. Okay, so Oswald's time in Atsugi is wrought with controversy for many, many reasons. It's hard to tell a fluid story of Oswald's time in Atsugi, but I'm going to do my best. So Oswald gets there. Let me see if I can do this based off of this document or if I need anything else. No, I'll do it off of this one. Okay, so Oswald, he gets to Atsugi and on September the 12th. That's the official story. That is Lee Oswald, not Harvey Oswald. I'm telling you with 100% certainty, Harvey Oswald arrived at Atsugi on a different boat. I'm having trouble locating the boat, and I have some of the evidence I'm going to show you here coming up, but I'm telling you with certainty, they came in on 2 different boats on 2 different dates. One of them came in earlier. Harvey came in earlier and will end up in Corregidor in November as opposed to December and January. So the biggest thing to take away from this is that Lee Oswald gets to Atsugi, Japan, September 12th. On October the 27th, he will shoot himself in the arm with a .22. Okay? This is extremely important. I believe he shot himself on purpose. He will later tell other Marines he shot himself on purpose. Why did he shoot himself on purpose? I do not know. I can only speculate. And I promise you, it has to do with the comings or goings of Harvey Oswald and the fact that they couldn't be in the same place at the same time. He will be hospitalized from the 27th of October through the 16th of November. Okay. 4 days later, when he gets out of the hospital, where they, I have, your mind's going to be blown when I show you the documents surrounding his hospital stay. He will, on the 20th of November, get on a boat and he will sail for the Philippines, where he arrives on November 30th. And this becomes problematic because then we're dealing with Subic Bay. And Subic Bay, we will get to the death of Martin Strand. This is like the wildest thing of all time. So on October 27th, 1957, Oswald will accidentally shoot himself in the upper left arm. This will put him in the hospital at Yokosuka until November 16th, 1957. Many fellow Marines speculated Oswald was attempting to get out of the service. It was documented that a .22 slug was removed from the left upper arm on November 5th, 1957. He will be at the Ikosuka Naval Hospital number 3923 until November 15th, 1957. I need you to take very careful note of this number, 3923. 3923 is the number of the Ikosuka Naval Hospital, which is about 40 miles away from Atsugi. Okay. Very important you remember that number. Okay. So according to Robinson is a guy who's in the Marines with Oswald. He says that he was told Oswald got shot in the wrist, and then he sees Oswald with a bandaged wrist. So which is it? Was he shot in the upper left arm or was he shot in the wrist? Then we have this article that comes from one of the guys who was in Oswald's group. And he says, I believe it was a deliberate act and a get out of the Marine Corps free shot, he said, referring to the placement of the wound and Oswald's reaction afterwards. And then he says something very peculiar. Some reports over the years say that Oswald shot himself in the elbow. Beach disputes that. No, I was right there, he said. That was the last time I saw him in the barracks. They took him away. We'd go to chow and we'd see the MPs bring him in. He was not allowed to associate with anyone. He was under lock and key. The thing is, none of us really paid much attention to him. He wasn't important to us. At the time, he was just a guy who shot himself to get out of the Marines, right? So this guy, Beach, is saying, no, he didn't shoot himself in the elbow. He was right there. He never clarifies where he was actually shot, though. This is Beach right here in MACS-1 radar techniques in Taiwan in October of 58. All right, so now here is at this point, I get to these points when I'm doing my research that I just want to quit. And this moments like this are why. So let's read this. There are several small areas of metallic density just medial to the medial epicondyle. There's a larger area of metallic density which lies adjacent to the medial aspect of the shaft of the femur, approximately 4 inches from its distal articular surface. Okay, so Jesus Christ, was he shot in the fucking wrist, the upper arm, or the femur? According to Beach, he didn't get shot in the elbow. He was seen wearing a bandage around the wrist. This here, they say that this was possibly an artifact, which I would probably agree with. That he probably wasn't shot in the goddamn leg, or was he? Either way, it says that this was an artifact here, and that it was done at Naval Hospital 3923. That will become very important when Oswald is alleged to have been on a boat when he's actually still in the hospital. As you'll see, we will have major incidents of Oswald being in two places at once, again, here in the Marine Corps, beyond what we've already seen. Okay, so we definitely have some censorship and obfuscation of documents because on the left is an original document and on the right is a transcript of this original document. But the one on the right, the transcript, is way longer than the document that we actually have. Okay, you see that? So 27th October, right? Let's line everything up. Gunshot wound, left forearm, bandaged, same, transferred, USNH 3923. And it's signed off on, and it says gunshot, wound, all that stuff, forearm. And then here you got 21 notes, and that's not on the document on the left. That's in Oswald's Donabedian exhibit. And the Donabedian exhibit, man, they fucked us on this Donabedian exhibit, and I'll tell you why. The Donabedian exhibit is the medical stuff, right? So you have the Folsom report, which is important because it's Oswald's overall records, which is 100 and something pages. But then you have the Donabedian exhibit. And the Donabedian exhibit, the one we have is about 35, 36 pages long. But when they refer to it in testimony during the Warren Commission, they're referring to Donabedian exhibit page number 120 something, right? So they basically took a fucking 100 pages out of Oswald's medical record before giving it to us, right? But Trump's going to give it to us. Give me a fucking break. Okay, let me say this, and I want everyone to hear me loud and fucking clear. Right now, Thomas Massey, Lauren Boebert, and fucking Anna Paulina Luna are in possession of my book and a full list of the real documents that we fucking need, including the 986-page Marguerite Oswald file. Okay? They are in possession of it. I've never heard from them. I probably will never hear from them. And they can never say they didn't know what documents to pull because they are in possession of my book and the list of documents right now. I sent them weeks ago to their offices, the small offices back home, not the Washington office. You always want to do that. All right. So here, let's look at Oswald's records here. And we can discern that by the time the Warren Commission rolls around and they pull Oswald's records, these have been consolidated. Because here you have Lee at basic training, and you have Harvey reports the 26th of October of 56, right? So you have clear indications that this is the records of two different people with different dates. Here at MAD, which is the Marine Aviation Division, I believe, NA Tech Training Center in Jacksonville, Florida, March to May 3rd. Those dates seem right, and that's for Lee Oswald, who then went to the aviation control course in Biloxi, right? All that makes sense. Then you have 9/12/57. I have H here, report for duty Japan. That's wrong. It's Lee, actually, because Harvey, I concluded, was on another boat. Then we have the Yokosuka, and then Lee Oswald, is a good chance that he left the Marines far before we're actually told in September. And that Harvey Oswald stayed in at Marine Air Control Squadron 9 in Santa Ana. Okay, this is where the pay records contradict the known duty roster, and we can say with basically absolute certainty that Oswald was once again in two places at once. So here we have the dates of 7/17/57. And that's a problem, and I'll tell you why. Because when Oswald leaves from Biloxi, Mississippi, he leaves June 19th. He doesn't have to report back anywhere until the 9th of July, right? It's on his paperwork, the 9th of July, he has to be in El Toro, California for the draft to get sent overseas, right?
You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
Problematic is that the rest of his crew, the other 5 guys in the group of 6, they didn't have to be back till the 12th. Why did Oswald have to get there 3 days before them? I don't know. Will the documents tell us? Hopefully. So reported July 9th, 57, departed for Japan around August 1st. First departed August 22nd. So then you have Harvey at MACS 1 at Sugi 9/12/57. That's what I said, okay? Now, here we have, to me, the absolute proof and clarification of when Oswald went to Corregidor. And this is a big problem because Corregidor, we can say with certainty that Oswald didn't go to Corregidor as per the known story until the end of January 1958. He was in Subic Bay the whole time. But Oswald's photograph, and I think it's coming up real soon, if not next. Or is it? Let me just skip to it. Here we go. Oswald's photograph here on the left, he clearly writes Corregidor 1957. That's Harvey Oswald. Okay. The photograph on the right here is an anomaly that nobody can explain. It's allegedly January 58, but I think the date is wrong because that's also allegedly Harvey Oswald in the background there. But I can tell you with certainty that in January 58, Harvey Oswald was no longer in Corregidor. Lee Oswald was in Corregidor. They switched at that point. And how do we know that they switched? Because of this record here. Right here. These idiots They don't realize that even though something's redacted, and they had redacted his time in Corregidor here, he was clearly in Corregidor from November 4th to December 18th. And that's Harvey Oswald, right? And so what would have happened here? Why did, okay, so, oh God, it just hit me. This is why this happened. This is why Oswald shot himself. Lee Oswald was supposed to be on that boat, and he knew he couldn't be on that boat on November 4th. So he shot himself in the goddamn elbow, which on October 27th puts him in until November the 15th or 16th, right? So Harvey Oswald gets on that boat, and that's why he did it, because he couldn't be on the same boat as his brother, as he knew he would be there. That's why he did it. And the timing makes perfect sense right here from the payroll record, and the payroll record here contradicts the known duty roster. So we can say with certainty Harvey Oswald was in Corregidor from November 4th to December 18th. Guaranteed. Okay? When the other Oswald wasn't, he was in the hospital till November 16th, and then from November 20th, he hops on a boat, and where does he go? He goes to Subic Bay. Subic Bay is in South Philippines. Corregidor is the other part of Philippines. So what do you have? You have that overlap between November 20th and December 18th. They arrive November 30th, so that narrows down the time period that they could have ever possibly crossed from the 30th of November through December 18th, right? So you're looking at like 3 weeks. What happens shortly after January 1st, 1957? What happens shortly after this time period when Lee Harvey Oswald, the real Lee Oswald, is stationed down in Subic Bay? That will bring us to the death of Martin Strand. I'm going to skip some of this stuff because we're going to get to Strand. Before I get to Strand, we got a Marine, Richard Sear. He's on the LST Cuyahoga County, and he basically says that he sees Oswald on the boat with him on Cuyahoga County. He's wrong. I completely debunked his story, and even Richard Sear wasn't on the Cuyahoga County. All the ships back then that participated in the drills in the South China Sea, they started around November 10th, but really they got going around the 15th, and this is when Oswald was supposed to have gone, right, for the maneuvers in the South China Sea. All stuff that had to do with Philippines and what they called Formosa, Taiwan. And so, but no, he was not on the Cuyahoga County, and neither was Richard Sear. When I start to dig into the Cuyahoga County, and you want to see how deep this research was, I fucking learned everything I could about the Cuyahoga County. The goddamn Cuyahoga County, guess what? Despite the fact I was able to go through all of the records, the individual records of where it was parked, and the Cuyahoga County never did any of the shit that Richard Sear said it did. None of it. Period. Zero. The official story says that Oswald was on the Terrell County, not the Cuyahoga County. And the kicker is the Cuyahoga County never went on maneuvers in the South China Sea. It went to Okinawa for refueling before returning to Guam, and absolutely nothing Richard Sear said was even possible or much less true. So he couldn't have been stationed on it because it went out of town and dipped over to Guam, and he stayed in goddamn Atsugi. So I don't know what the fuck Richard Sear is talking about. This is a total dead end. So I'm still actively looking for the ship that Oswald made his trips on, because he didn't do it on the same boat as his brother Lee. Not a chance. All right. Death of Martin Strand. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Martin Strand was murdered. He was not shot with a shotgun, and he was murdered over this dual Oswald scheme. I've concluded this 100%. Can I conclusively prove it to all the skeptics out there? No. I don't give a fuck. This is what happened. He was murdered because he figured out the two Oswald scheme. So he's on patrol, guard duty in Subic Bay. I think it's January 5th, first week of January, something like that. The date isn't really overly relevant. But it's Subic Bay, which is in the Philippines, and a lot of stuff happens, but we'll take it kind of slow. All of a sudden, there's a shot, and another guy goes running off and says, "Oh my God, one of the sentries shot somebody." They end up getting a couple people back there, and basically, it turns out that Martin Strand is shot to death with his own weapon. They say he's shot with a shotgun. But it doesn't, there's a lot missing from this story. You know, even as I try to piece it together as I tell it to you, there's a lot missing. So it makes it difficult to tell a fluid narrative because of what's missing. Statements from Oswald. Oswald was alleged to have been involved with this. Okay, I'll read this. This is a statement from Donald Peter Camarata, one of Oswald's six, right? Either en route back to the United States or subsequent to my return, I heard a rumor to the effect that Oswald had been in some way responsible for the death of Martin Strand. I have no personal knowledge of any such involvement. I do not remember who told me of this rumor, and I'm not even certain that I heard it from more than one person. So here's a thing. Here's a problem that I have. So Oswald is, they investigated Oswald from the jump. Oswald is not alleged to have been on sentry duty that night. Oswald is alleged to have been on mess duty that night, or not in the area at all in some other capacity. The problems that we have are, there is a statement of a witness who said that one of the sentries, meaning not Strand and not Oswald, came running into like the barracks area and said one of the sentries shot somebody. That was a direct quote. One of the sentries shot somebody. Not that one of the sentries shot himself, but that one of the sentries shot somebody. So they get out there, and I'm going to cut to the chase. When you go through the actual autopsy reports, you know, as an ex-cop, I got to say, there are technical terms that are often used for various things. Like if someone is shot, and especially in this case, they utilize the term in the autopsy, the missile, right? The damage that was done by the missile. That's not normally how you would describe damage from a shotgun blast of shotgun pellets. You wouldn't describe shotgun pellets as a missile. You might describe them as the, collective missiles. You might do that, but that's not how it's described in the autopsy. It's described as the missile, meaning one, singular. And then when you go through the statements of some of the other guys who actually had worked guard duty with Oswald, what you come to find out that they don't tell you here is that all the sentries were also issued a 45. So they had a shotgun and a 45. The idea that they had a 45 is never mentioned in the investigative report ever. Ever. It only says that they had a shotgun. And the shotgun, look, they're at Subic Bay. And despite what some of the Marines said about locals, opening fire from sea at some of these sentries, there's no evidence that stuff ever really happened. And so it becomes apparent that the story we're told about even the logistics of how this went down don't make any sense. First off, all of these Marines who work guard duty are issued a shotgun, and they're issued 4 shotgun shells. Now, in this case, it was found that Strand was shot with his own shotgun, and that there was one live shot. There was a shotgun shell in the barrel that had been fired that killed him, and the 3 other shells that he was given were in his pocket. The problem is all 4 should have been in his pocket. There never should have been a time when there was a shotgun shell in there, because they even say in the interviews with these guys that their policy was to keep them in your pocket, and if you actually had some trouble, then you'd load up. That was what they were doing. There's no reason that the shotgun shell should have ever been in the shotgun in the first place. When they find his body, it doesn't say this in the initial reports. You have to get this from some of the testimony and interviews of these guys later on. But it indicates that the shotgun was found under his legs, behind him. Like he was laying down flat on his back, and the shotgun was under his knees, basically off to the left-hand side. If we go back and we look at this, that's not right. The reenactment is false. The gun should have been under his legs. Right? But that's not what they're doing here. They're covering something up here. One thing I thought was kind of gruesome was that when they interviewed the guys, a lot of the guys came up and they said that they saw after he'd been shot in the pool of blood, there was a bunch of Christmas candy because he had gotten some candy from the mess hall, and it basically blew it out of his pocket. But the idea that he was shot with a shotgun, to me, doesn't make any sense by the way that they're describing it in the autopsy report. It just doesn't make any sense. Something feels artificial about it. Everything about the investigation feels artificial. And guess what we don't have? Oswald was accused, and we don't have a statement from Oswald saying where the fuck he was or what he was doing or was he involved at all. 0. It's like it didn't exist. So what does that mean? They're hiding this document. Once again, Trump, hey, Trump, you listening? Trump, where's the fucking document, Trump? That's Martin Strand up in the upper left of this photograph. This is just more documentation. This document here gets rather interesting. At the above time and place, the sentry on post at the crypto van, a private first-class persons, heard a shot from the area containing the parked motor vehicle. Okay, what did I just say there? The sentry on post at the crypto van. The crypto van held cryptographic encryption stuff that they did in the 60s that had to do with radar encryption. Okay. The radar encryption stuff required what is called a crypto clearance. And Harold Weisberg discovered what he believed was Oswald's crypto clearance. And it was also rumored that it was these 6 guys in particular. That's why they were paired together, because these 6 guys had this crypto clearance. Now, again, we will not know any of this until it's confirmed by the release of real documents, which they're never going to give us. But yeah, this document here just shows it right from the jump. It was always speculated that Oswald had something to do with the death of Martin Strand, and the idea that he was never interviewed about it, or we have no documents regarding Oswald's personal involvement. We have all the statements from everybody else. I got 100 pages of documents on the murder of Martin Strand, and they don't tell me a goddamn thing other than what I just told you. It's really frustrating. All right, so documents of statements of fellow Marines indicated that Oswald was assigned guard duty from time to time. This is evident by the incident in Taiwan on October 4th. Harold Weisberg believed that Oswald had to have a crypto clearance in order to work with that van. I'm pretty sure that's true. The official story says Oswald had a confidential clearing, not a crypto clearing. Man, I'm starting to fade. How many slides I got left? Let me see. 100.
You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.